Everyone, my name is Harry Huang. Just a quick intro in case we got anyone who coming from some public that we don't know. My name is Harry Huang. I'm the CEO of Tailored Accounts, and this is our first monthly Tailored Account Power Hours of 2019. And I would like to welcome Donna Mo, who's yeah, we can see her in the videos there, and I would like to welcome Donna to start the sessions. Thank you.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me, and thank you Harry for introducing me. So again, this is the first one, so there may be some glitches, but we'll smooth them all out as we go. But let's hope that it flows well. So today is the first hour of power session, or power hour, whatever you would like to call it, but it's the ability for you to take in some information, learn some new tools, and also get some ideas about how you can implement some of these power sessions into your workplace and also into your life, just on a personal basis as well, because growth is growth, and these sessions are about helping you grow and integrate these things into a team. So one of the most beneficial tools we can have, and I'll talk a lot about tools because tools help us develop strategies. So you'll see that I talk about a tool bag, and you'll see that we have a couple of steps that you can implement pretty much straight away into your workplace. Now, just a little bit of background about me. I've been in the training industry now for, I think it's just over 15 years. I'm very passionate about training. I'm very, very passionate and focused on personal growth. And resilience has been one of the key focuses for our organisation, because we see what's going on in industry. Particularly, we see where resilience is lacking, mental health problems are increasing, and people's ability to adjust to change is also on the increase, or the inability to adjust to change, more importantly. So let's go through this, and it's really important that if questions arise for you, just write them down, and also there'll be some question time that Nee will allow you to ask, and then we can work through those. So don't be afraid to ask a question. I pretty much have a rule that there is no such thing as a dumb question. A question not asked is a problem not solved, basically. So let's have a look at what we're going through. So what is the definition of resilience? And we also have business continuity and competitiveness. So bringing a competitive advantage to business, and teams are able to do that when they're much more resilient. Making resilience reality, developing resilience, and measuring resilience. Resilience as an acquired skill, and then you can ask some questions. So let's have a look at, in an organisation, resilience is defined as, and I'm just going to read out something that I put in here today. So organisational resilience is defined as the ability of a system to withstand change in its environment and to still function. So there's one organisation definition. Individual resilience is defined as the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. So they're just some clear definitions, but if you think about resilience, I like to use the analogy of bounce. So if you think about a bouncing ball will hit something and bounce back. And we have to be able to do that in life. And if we don't think about how we can bounce back from adversity, or from tough decisions, or from challenges that happen in our workplace, if we don't know how to do that, then we end up losing our jobs. We end up in a job that we don't enjoy and we feel stuck in. So the ability to bounce means that you can overcome adversity, and you can build that muscle of resilience. And that's what we want people to be able to do. So business continuity and competitiveness. So in business, we must have resilient people within our organisation to be able to connect, communicate, and bounce back after adversity, change, or setback. So what does it mean to connect? Now, in a workplace, connection is vital. If you aren't connecting with your colleagues, if you aren't connecting with your team in different projects, if you're not connecting with your employer or your manager, then you're going to have a hard time working through obstacles or working through just general projects. So it's important to be able to connect on a level that means you might understand the other person and the other person may understand you. And of course, that's developed through communication. Now, communication is one of those things that people say is really easy, but when we look at effective communication, then that's a little bit more challenging. But the effective communication is developed, again, like a muscle, by asking questions. People think they are good communicators, but what they're doing is talking instead of listening, or they're listening to respond instead of listening to understand. And so if we think about our communication style, I want you to just write down on a scale of 1 to 10. We use scales because that enables us to be able to measure and then adjust if it's not where we want it to be. So if you thought about a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to write down where you think you sit on that level of communication. Do you think you're an okay communicator, therefore you might sit about 3 or 4? Or do you think you're an excellent communicator, therefore you're sitting up at maybe 9 or sometimes 10? Now, high achievers might go, I can't circle 10 because 10 would be perfect, and that's not possible. But it actually is possible to be communicating at a level 10. Not all the time, certainly not 100% of the time, but to communicate in a way that's effective might be in a team meeting. It might be when you're having a hard conversation that you can communicate more effectively. So think about this, where you are on the scale. Once you've actually circled the number, I want you to now think about whether or not you can improve on that number and what that would look like. So when we want to improve a skill, to become more resilient, to communicate, to connect, whatever the skill might be, we then need to set an action plan as to how we're going to do that. So one of the things you want to think about is, if you don't know what kind of action you can take, then who could you ask? Now, if I thought about becoming a better communicator, because I always want to improve my communication, I'm going to look for those people who are going to help me communicate better. I want to listen more. I want to be able to look people in the eye and communicate from an authentic position. What do I mean by that? Those of you who don't understand what I mean by authentic position or an authentic communicator, I want you to think about what that might mean for you. What does authenticity mean? If I'm communicating authentically, I'm saying no when I don't want to do something, instead of yes because I don't want to upset someone or I don't want to disappoint. So when I'm communicating authentically, I will also say what's troubling me and be able to articulate it in a way that someone will understand. So I can talk to people and communicate what the issues are for me, even if I don't know how to solve the problem. And if I can get some assistance with that, I'm actually connecting with people. I'm connecting with people who can help me communicate better or actually become more resilient. So think about someone you might know that is quite shaken by anything that goes wrong in their life. They become very stressed, anxiety might increase. And if you know those people, think about the behaviours, or if it's yourself, think about the behaviours that you observe. But for yourself, think about what happens within the body. When I feel stressed, I feel what? And write those things down. When I'm feeling anxious, I feel what? So these are some of the questions we need to ask if we want to build up these muscles of resilience, if we want to build up muscles of connectedness, and we want to communicate better with people. So how does this give us a competitive advantage? So one of the things we need to do, now I just can I just interrupt you for a second? I just need you to move the actual video screens if possible.
Yep.
On the screen, because you control that. Do you?
Yes.
Are they able to be moved up the top?
Yep. So have you seen? Are you seeing the video box now? Because it's already been minimized.
Yeah, I can still see. Do I need? Do I need to do it from my end?
Yes, you can do that too.
Okay. So I'm sorry to do this. It's putting me off where I can't see some of my terms. No, it's not actually allowing me to. That's okay. I will figure it out. I apologise for that, but like I said today, we might have some glitches just getting through the first one. So when we look at a competitive advantage in business, building a resilient team provides the competitive advantage. You may ask how. Let's look at some examples. So what happens in industry? What happens in our organisation? And some of those things are, if there's a legislative change, and in my industry, there's always legislative changes. And if someone, as an individual, needs certainty, change can throw them off kilter. Okay, so if there's technical changes, technological changes can be very disruptive, because you will have people who feel they're not strong at that, and therefore they go, well, I'm never going to be able to get this skill. I'm never going to be able to use the computers. I'm never going to be able to use these iPads. We heard this a lot when iPads first came in, and some generations felt that that was very overwhelming. If there's environmental changes and also team player changes, sometimes you have to put someone in another team, or sometimes you have to pair people up, and this can be quite difficult for people to adjust to. So we want to make sure that we understand people's needs to be able to look at what's going to occur for them when these changes happen. So as the leader in your organisation, there's things that you can do, and then as a team member in your organisation, there's things that you can do to support. But you have to be more aware that these things are either going to affect you or they're going to affect other team members. Because whether it affects you or it affects somebody else, there's going to be some disruption because of those changes. So those that are more resilient cope better than those who aren't resilient. People will quit their job because change is going to occur, and they have so much uncertainty about the change. Now, I'm going to give you a very personal experience in my team. I have a staff member who is a great asset to my organisation. She is extremely committed. She's extremely passionate about her job, and she gives all of my students that come through our door, she gives them a wonderful experience. However, there are things that she struggles to cope with, which is change. Now, that can be as simple as me moving the office around. It can be as simple as if she came in on Monday morning and furniture had been moved, that is so much change to her that it puts her off kilter for quite some time. And so certainty is one of her core values. Therefore, I need to give her the heads up sometimes on a Friday to say, there might be some changes on Monday. The furniture is going to be moved around. So I actually like change, but that doesn't mean that everyone around me likes change. So I need to be more aware of that so that I can build that into our strategies and ensure that everybody within the team is comfortable. If I know how I work, I can become more aware of how other people work, how they function in the organisation. Some people within your team may just need more information. More information empowers them, therefore they're not going to become anxious about what the change is. Now, a legislative change is going to change no matter what, regardless of whether we want it to change or not. So how can we implement those changes into the organisation whilst making sure everybody feels comfortable about the changes or knows that there's a plan in place to integrate them appropriately? There's some of the things that we need to think about. Now, before I go into making resilience a reality, I just want to see if Nee can tell me if there is any questions coming up so far.
Any questions?
Any questions coming up?
Yep.
Is that question coming?
Not at the moment. I haven't seen any questions.
Okay, great.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, maybe we just move on for now.
All right, no problem at all. All right, so making resilience a reality. How do we do this? One of the things I talked about was creating a tool bag. Now, you might say, what do I mean by that? A tool bag is basically like like when you're building a house, you have a bag of tools that help you do particular things. So in my tool bag, when I need to face challenges, when I have big changes, I have a tool bag that supports me. And some of those tools might be reading particular books that are going to help me understand things, talking to the right people and talking through what I see are some of the challenges that are going to arise, or talking through some of my fears about what potentially might happen. I'm very much an overthinker, and when I overthink things, it's not necessarily that I'm pessimist and think the worst, but I overthink things. And that's actually a very good trait of mine, but it can be a trait that gets me into trouble sometimes. So some of the things I have also are going for a walk and deep breathing. Now, some people might not think that that's an important tool, but if you look at some of the studies, deep breathing actually changes what's going on in the brain. So when we become overwhelmed, we might become anxious, we might shake, we might feel sick in the stomach because we're feeling anxious. Every person discovers their different responses to stress or adversity or perceived conflict. So going for a walk and deep breathing, and I just want to talk to you about, I hope everyone has a pen and paper. There's a strategy that helps with becoming resilient and reducing your anxious feelings, especially before you go into a meeting, if that meeting is going to be a challenging meeting. I want everyone to draw a square on their piece of paper. It doesn't matter how big the square is, just draw the square. And when you've drawn that square, on the top of the square, I want you to write, breathe in. So breathe in for the count of 4. Right, so that's simply breathe in for the count of 4. Go down to the right-hand side of the square, and I want you to write, hold for 4. So you're holding your breath for 4, for the count of 4. Okay? Then go down to the bottom of the square, and you're breathing out for the count of 4. Okay? And then over on the left-hand side, I should say, you're writing down, hold out for the count of 4. Okay, so let me just go over that again with you. Breathe in for the count of 4, hold for the count of 4, breathe out for the count of 4, and then further hold that breath out for a count of 4. Now, box breathing is actually used by SES SEALs, people who are highly trained. Some call it box breathing, some call it strategic breathing, others call it a meditation. But it's a very simple tool that's going to reduce what's going on within your body that starts with the brain in overload. All right, so there's a couple of things: breathing, walking, reading. Now I want you to just quickly write down 2 things that you could put in your own tool bag, and maybe in addition to what I've advised, okay? So you could easily end up with maybe 4 or 5 things in your tool bag, hopefully 6. Or you might actually commit to doing some research about how you can create some different tools or come across different tools. Simply ask another work colleague, what do you do when you're stressed? What do you do when you're feeling overwhelmed? To be able to then focus and get back on task. All right, these are all part of the things of making resilience a reality. Okay, the next point is self-awareness and confidence. The more overwhelmed we are, the more stressed we feel, our self-confidence and self-awareness decreases. Okay, so when we've got tools and we can keep control of some of that anxiety or stress, whatever you want to call it, we increase our self-awareness. I know what's going on inside right now. And that builds our confidence because we go, I now know what to do. This in turn increases our self-belief. I've got this. I know how to do this now. I've done it before. This is all part of building that muscle that we need to build resilience. The last one there is get some support. So who are you going to get support from? Now, one of the people you don't want to get support from is the naysayers, the pessimists, the people who can't tell you or who tell you you can't do it. They are not the people you want to turn to for support. You want to turn to people who believe in you, who understand some of what you're going through, and maybe they've been there themselves. Okay? Now, here's a couple of things that stop us from becoming resilient, and it's very important to be aware of these. Now, above when we talked about self-awareness will help you discover if you are taking that voice in your head, the negative self-talk, okay? So the negative self-talk, oh, you're so silly. How could you have been so stupid? How could you have let this happen? That negative self-talk. That stops you from becoming resilient because you're beating yourself up. That then goes down into low self-esteem. The more negative self-talk, the lower your self-esteem is going to happen. Like it's going to be pushed down, okay? And then if you have lack of support, that stops you from becoming resilient because the support is actually going to encourage you to become more resilient. It's going to encourage you to keep pushing through when there's times that you're feeling quite challenged. Okay, so I hope you're thinking now about a time where you were feeling challenged. What did you do? What did it look like? Because I want to go into the next point, which is buying into the drama. Now, I used to be the queen of drama. I could buy into the drama. I could create more drama. I was really good at it too. But it didn't make me resilient. And now I'm actually allergic to the drama. I'm allergic to the negative self-talk. So when you look at, do I buy into the drama, what does that look like for you? So part of that is thinking about when you tell someone about something that has happened and they go, oh my God, that's terrible, you must feel awful. That's not the kind of support that you want. It's, this must be really hard. How can I support you? Is there anything you need from me? Is better support. You then have to think about what that looks like. And you can simply say to someone, I actually don't know what kind of support I need, but can I come back to you when I've had a chance to think about that? Okay? Instead of just saying, no, I don't need your support, I don't know what that looks like. Just say, thank you for your support. I'm not sure what you can do. But when you are breathing, when we go back to the box breathing, when you're breathing, you can actually respond differently. You can actually tap into where you're struggling. You can tap into how you're feeling because you're thinking about what's going on for me right now. And if you don't ask questions, you can't become resilient, because by not asking questions, now there's two parts to that. You need to ask yourself questions. What's going on for me right now? Is this true? But then you can ask other people questions. If a lot of people are in the meeting, could be 5 people in the meeting, maybe you heard things differently to the other person, and by talking, you can all be on the same page. What was your understanding of that meeting? Again, that's a powerful question, to hear what else someone thinks. Their perspective can help you with your perspective at times. Choosing carefully. Okay, reflection and correction. So developing resilience, we need to reflect to be able to correct. And if we don't reflect on what's going on or what we did, then there's no way to correct the situation. Reflection allows us to ask questions, look back on the situation, not to beat ourselves up, but to say, what happened there? Okay? So step 1 is reflect on the situation. Step 2 is talk through or journal. Okay? What happened? And get it out of your head. Talk with a co-worker, talk with a partner, talk with a roommate, and just talk about it. Writing it down is very, very powerful if you don't have anyone to talk to. When you can journal it, when you can write down what actually happened for you, you can reflect on that later, especially when you've had time to breathe or go for a walk and get perspective. So then you look at step 3, then take the steps to identify what you can do differently next time. And you could journal that as well. You could say, well, you know what, this time I didn't handle that particularly well. I could have done that better. Here's what I could have done. And then you're able to let it go. If you don't write it down or you don't talk with someone, it actually runs through our head. And that's when the negative self-talk can occur. But running around in our head is actually different to saying it out loud, even if you're talking out loud to yourself because you don't feel that you're in a safe space to talk with someone else. Saying it out loud means that you can hear what's being said as well. So that's a really important strategy. Write down anything else that you think you could do. Okay? So again, it's important if you do have negative self-talk that you ask yourself some questions. And I've written down a question that I've asked myself for a long time at different stages of my career, at different stages of my parenting, at different stages of friendship. I've asked the question of, did I do the best that I could do with the resources I had at the time? And again, this is where you have to tell yourself the truth. You have to be honest about, did I do the best that I could? Now, if I didn't, I need to write down what could I have done better. If I did do the best that I could do with the resources I had at the time, then I can let that go. Now, what do you think the question means? And I know you can't answer me right now, but what do you think the question means where it says, with the resources I had at the time? because that's a really important component. The resources I had at the time could be the information, the skills, the ability. So sometimes we don't have the tools, but if we didn't have all the information, did we make the best decision that we could with the information we had at the time? And then we look at measuring. So when you want to measure something, if you go and work out at the gym, you can use a tape measure. That's a really easy result to see. If you are losing weight, you jump on the scales. If you're building muscle and jump on the scales, you're going to get a false result. So what you want to do is you want to measure resilience in a way that you can. And this sometimes means that we need to feel it. So recently, think about if you've had a challenge. Recently, I've had a challenge and I was able to measure my resilience because I know I wasn't as affected. I know that I didn't get as emotional because I asked myself lots of questions about what is really the truth here? What is really happening? How do I feel about this? What would be the best decision? And in this decision, who do I need to consider? Is there any questions coming up for how you would measure your own resilience at this time? And it's okay if there isn't. I actually can't see the chat, so I'm not sure if there is anything coming up. But
yep, there, Donna, there's 3 questions.
Okay.
If you can see the chat box, but if that's okay, I can read out loud. Question 1, how to enhance resilience at the workplace?
How to enhance resilience at the workplace?
Yes.
Well, I need to know what you specifically mean by enhance. What term are you meaning to, how do you enhance? Do you want to encourage other people to be resilient?
Yes, I guess that's the person wanted to ask.
Okay. First of all, you have to become resilient yourself. And if you're already quite resilient, the way you can encourage other people to become resilient is being very aware of their behaviours, because you can actually see if they're very stressed or they're overwhelmed, you can actually say, is everything okay? Or you can say, how are you going with this project? And you can encourage them to talk about it. But what you don't want to do is solve the problem for them. You want them to talk about it, and then you want to ask them some more questions, because then that enables them to come up with their own answers as well. But don't solve problems for people. So when we have people who want you to solve the problem, it's very easy. If you are a solution-based person, it's very easy for you to say, oh, you should do this. What you want to say is this really hard for you right now? And they might say, yeah, it is, because I don't know what to do. So what are some of the key problems you're having right now? And then you can continue on that conversation by saying, okay, well, let's break it down. What do you think you could do here? Because sometimes we look at the big picture and it's all too much. Therefore, you're overwhelmed. So if you want to, you use the word enhance resilience, what I am sensing is you want to encourage it, and you want to build it into part of the culture of the organisation, I suspect. Correct me if I'm wrong. Just put a note up there for Nee and she'll stop me.
Okay.
But it really is about collaboration, communication, and getting people to start to solve their own problems just by talking it through. Has this problem ever occurred before? No, I haven't come across this problem before. Okay, so let's break it down. Maybe sometimes you need to whiteboard things. Sometimes you need to just write it down and go, well, I think it's this problem. We can't get someone else to collaborate. How do you think we can get them to collaborate? Well, do you know that they don't want to collaborate, or is it that they don't understand what is needed right now? Okay, so questions are going to encourage that movement of bringing resilience into the culture, that movement of having people talk about the problems instead of feeling like they can't. Because sometimes people will think this is a silly problem, so I'm not going to talk about it. Or I really should know the answer to this and I'm too embarrassed to ask. You want to encourage that, and with positive reinforcement as well, to make sure that the next time this comes up, they want to talk about it. And this is something that just needs to be developed over time, but it can actually start to develop quite rapidly because trust is built, communication is built. Even if you think you're communicating well at the moment. So one of the things that we do here at our organisation is we ask a question about, well, tell me what that looks like for you, so I understand what you're asking for. And I'm actually going to talk to you about a really important book that I think should be in every organisation, because it really does talk about people collaborating and building those powerful communication tools, which again means that resilience is being built within everyone, not just some of the team, all of the team. Okay? Resilience as an acquired skill. You know, there is the saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, and that's very, very true. And I've been working around resilience, communication, all of those things for quite a number of years now. And I still feel like I'm at the tip of the iceberg. So, you know, this is something we have to work at, just like building a muscle. Go to the gym. It doesn't happen in a week. In fact, it doesn't happen in a month. But consistently, you will see changes. So if you have not used some tools and techniques before, then remember, everything great takes time. Skills develop with use, just like the muscle. So think about the last time you learnt how to do something. How long did it take you? So I just want to go back. Nee, there was another question.
Yes.
Or another two questions?
Yes, there were 3 questions actually.
Okay.
Yeah, let me read it for you. So question 2 from the ground: where is the balance point between flexibility and resilience?
Where is the balance point between flexibility and resilience? I don't know that there's a balance point. Flexibility is a completely different, you know, when we look at being flexible, flexibility is, for example, one of my staff members has a child going to school and she would like to pick the child up at 2 p.m. At 3 p.m. I can be flexible and say, well, okay, let's compromise and you can finish at 2 p.m, but you must make sure that you've got your task done. I can be that kind of flexible. But that's got nothing to do with resilience.
Yep.
And
Sorry, I guess the question should be worded as a being compromising versus being resilient. Yeah, so that should be the correct terms.
Compromising versus resilience.
Yes.
Again, I don't see that they connect, because when I'm compromising, what am I compromising on? And I don't need to be resilient to compromise, because a compromise is not dealing with adversity as such. Compromising is, I mean, the thing is, what am I compromising on? And I would look at my values to say whether I'm prepared to compromise on that. You know, my values mean, my values are around integrity. My values are around honesty. My values are around, in my organisation, open communication is not negotiable. You must openly communicate, right? So they're part of our values, core values. I'm not compromising on those, right? And in fact, that raises the thing, I'm not compromising on my values because I am very resilient. If I compromised on my values against, if I said, well, okay, you don't have to communicate as much as we'd like you to, then that's not resilience.
Yep. Thank
Yeah.
you. So the next question from the ground. I guess you've covered it before. Being resilient is a personal trait, or can it be trained?
Oh, absolutely, it can be trained. It is not a it is not a personal trait. Some people may have more resilience than others, but it certainly is a developed trait. It can be trained, and resilience doesn't mean being pushed around. Resilience doesn't mean being bullied, right? If I'm bullied, I'm resilient. I can bounce back off that. That is not what it's about. Resilience is the ability to bounce back after adversity. Now, adversity could mean I've dealt with a very difficult situation in the workplace. I felt like I was being bullied. I dealt with it, and I'm resilient enough to bounce back and be able to get on with things, but I dealt with it, right? I didn't ignore it. I certainly didn't make it acceptable. But also, resilience can be about, we failed in a project. I've got to pick myself up, dust myself off, debrief and learn from what went wrong, and then I can move on. Now, resilience may be measured in, did it take me a month to move on, or did it take me three hours to move on, or 3 days to move on, because I'm able to bounce. That's why the analogy of the ball is so good, because how long is it going to take me to bounce? Does that answer that question?
Yep, I hope so. I'll just asking. Okay, one more question.
Okay.
From Harry, actually. Could we measure the worst challenge we have ever overcome and then use that as a measure tool to measure our own resilience level?
Yes, you can, and I often have to do that. So I'll give you a very positive example to that. In 2012, I made a decision to trek Kokoda. Now, to trek Kokoda, if there's any indication, the last time I looked at the statistics, they were 1% of Australians trek Kokoda, right? So not a lot of people trek Kokoda voluntarily, I would say. So my resilience, that helped build my muscle, because years before that, I had actually done a fire walk. So I actually literally walked on hot coals that had been burning for 11 hours. And so after I walked on hot coals, that was a measurement of, if I can do that, I can do that. Come on, Donna, if you can do that, you have to be able to get past this, right? So that there's a good measurement tool for some things. But you also have to remember that resilience comes in forms, or challenges comes in all different shapes and sizes. So when it comes to business, I'm very resilient, and I can look at the things, I can look at Kokoda, I can look at my firewalk and go, right, this is nothing compared to that. So come on, Donna, what do you need to do? Figure this out. But then I have challenges where last year my mother got very ill. When we got the diagnosis, I didn't feel very resilient. And you have to go through, so I had to feel what was going on for me, and I had to work through the emotions, because you're talking about my mother, not my business. And then I'm able to go, right, what do I need to do? Who do I need to talk to? How are we going to deal with this? And what does this really mean? Can you see how I just continuously ask myself questions? And that helps me build up my resilience. But my resilience scale changes depending on what's going on. Does that help?
Yes, I think there's no more question from the ground.
Okay, all right, fantastic. Okay, so then I have come to where we ask questions, but I want to just say before I do ask if there is any more questions, I'm a very avid reader, and I love books that can teach me things, and specifically teach me how to communicate better, teach me how to become more resilient, teach me how to become a better leader. And often I come across books that are extremely helpful. But this book here, so I just want to share, and I think you'd be able to see, it might be back to front, but this book is actually called Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. Right, Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. And I actually have a copy for Harry for bringing me into this wonderful experience. And I just highly recommend it, because some of the things that are in here, some of the communication strategies that just take your organisation to a whole new level, especially when you're coming across hard things. And in the book it's called rumbling. And rumbling is asking the questions and challenging and debating, but allowing people to ask questions and bringing their expectations. And also, when you look at strategies such as asking, if Harry asked me to do a task, I want to know specifically what that looks like for him. And if I needed more clarifying questions, I need to ask things like, tell me more about that part specifically, because I'm not sure I understand what you're looking for. And so when we have these, the ability to question more and understand more, one, we're increasing our communication, but importantly, we're increasing our connection. And increasing our connection will also help us become more resilient. Because when we feel alone, we don't feel like bouncing back particularly well. Right? So people don't want to be alone in what is called the rumble. Okay? So I said here, a question never asked is a problem never solved. And I said that earlier. So now I know we're 15 minutes ahead of time, but I did expect a few more questions so that we didn't go over time. So does anyone have any more questions they'd like to ask?
Donna, there's one question coming up. I'm going to put in the chat box now.
Okay. Yep. Could you read that out for me?
Yes. So the question comes up is, so I paraphrase it a bit. When we become too tired or overwhelmed because of the stress of our work, how do myself and my team maintain our resilience?
So when you are feeling tired, and sometimes people call that defeated, overwhelmed, how do you build up your resilience would be, one of the things is the box breathing. And if you do that 4 times, it actually changes what's going on. But we also need to have that, if you're not giving yourself a break, and I mean, we could go into a very long discussion about, are you eating right? Are you getting enough sleep? If we are sleep deprived, the brain is not functioning to its capacity. Sleep deprivation is a massive thing, specifically around mental health, but also the ability to function. So when I'm feeling tired or really beaten in a project or some challenge that I'm dealing with in business, because that's the norm, we have challenges. In our day-to-day life, we have challenges. So you have to know for you, what is something that you can do to be kind to yourself? Now, this doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't have to be an expensive thing. It can be a simple thing of taking a walk around the block just to have that mental break. It could be just having a brief chat with someone about how you're feeling and asking them what they do, because that might give you more ideas. So tiredness comes sometimes also from just sitting at your desk for a long period of time. So standing up and taking 5 deep breaths, doing the box breathing, again, will make a significant difference. But you have to figure out what works for you, and that's why you create that tool bag. There are tools that I have that I use all the time. And, you know, simple things like a meditation that you might find if you've got any kind of smartphone. There's free meditations that you can access. And there's a meditation by a man called David J. I is his name. And it's on SoundCloud. And it's a 6-minute reduction of anxiety meditation. Now, if you haven't got 6 minutes to reduce your anxiety, you have to ask yourself why. If you haven't got a couple of minutes to do box breathing, you have to ask yourself why. Because self-care increases self-esteem, right? If you are part of a team, you are a valuable part of the puzzle. And self-care, again, self-care is your responsibility. And that means that you're looking after yourself, therefore you can build resilience because you have those tools to self-care. Does that help?
Yes, the participant says okay. Thanks for that. The next question comes from Harry. Who is the best resilient person you ever met?
Best resilience person I've ever met. To some people, this may sound a little odd, but the best resilience person I have ever met today, I would say, is myself. And if you knew my story, you would probably agree with that. Then if I go into, I mean, we have many, many people, heroes over the centuries that were obviously resilient. We have people that have overcome such adversity, people who have been, you know, tortured, people who have been burnt, people who have survived horrendous things. You know, so I can always tap into those, but I really do. I admire people like Brené Brown, who wrote this book. She's actually got quite a number of books, but this book here, so she is actually a researcher of shame and fear, and so she actually teaches people how to become more resilient. So she's another person. Yeah, off the top of my head, I'm not sure I can name another person, but there's lots of them out there if you do some research. Any other questions?
No, at the moment, no one is sending me questions.
And of course, if anyone does come up with questions or needs to understand something more in depth, Nee can send me those questions and I will respond via email. And that could be a matter of, you know, tell me where to start with meditation, or tell me where to start with reading a book. You know, I'm a very avid reader, but I'm also time poor, so I love Audible or iBooks. And when I'm in the car driving, I'm actually listening to books all the time. So, you know, there's lots of different ways that you can build your resilience up and build a tool bag up for yourself. Okay. So, Nee, I think if there's no more questions, that's probably it.
Yep, no more questions from my end. Thanks, Donna.
Thank you very much, everyone, for participating. And like I said, Harry, I will be dropping this book over to you. So do we stop from there, Nee?
Yes, so I guess thank you everyone for your time today, and Donna and myself will see you in 2 months actually.
Yeah.
Next topic of our Thailand Cows Power Hour. Thanks so much, Donna. Thank you for your participation. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.